Hey, welcome back to the show. Good to have you. Subscribe, please. Like, please. Tell your friends, please. Click the bell, please. Let's grow this baby. Give me some comments. Are you liking what I'm saying out there? Anyone want to comment? You find this information helpful? Remember, it's an economic focus here at the Frank Roche channel. Let me know in the comments. Good, bad, keep it going. Get off YouTube. Anyway, right now I want to take a few minutes to talk about MAGA, Make America Great Again. There was another incident the other day over a MAGA hat. This time it occurred at Citi Field here in the New York City area in a Mets game when a diehard fan, a black woman, went to the game wearing her MAGA hat. The park employee told her she could not enter the stadium unless she took the hat off. And furthermore, she had to return it to the car so she couldn't sneak it on her head later. Mets officials later stated the employee was wrong to enforce a dress code of that kind. MAGA hats are welcome at Citi Field, so they quickly got on top of that. But there are examples all over the internet of people being verbally assaulted for wearing a MAGA hat. I wonder if you just wear a red hat these days if you get in trouble. The left talks about MAGA and the hat, something like this. MAGA Republicans have launched an unprecedented assault on our democracy, rights, and freedoms. Their dangerous agenda seeks to undermine U.S. elections, ban abortions nationwide, and end bedrock programs such as Social Security, all while inciting political violence against anyone who disagrees. I got that quote right from a Dem politician. I won't share the person's name, but that paragraph, that what I just read to you is full of lies and misrepresentations. Or another way people talk about MAGA, as many Democrats are doing in Chicago this week, including the former president and his wife, repeat these items about Trump and MAGA Republicans, driven by misogyny, racism, sexism, bullying, ego-driven, self-centered, dictator, small, petty. That's kind of the view of the MAGA hat and MAGA. And we've heard the slurs that Democrats have used against people that support President Trump for, 8 years now. The basket of deplorables, Hillary Clinton. Anyway, on Monday, during President Biden's speech, he said of MAGA Republicans, they can't think and they can't read very well. Anyway, kind of what surrounds MAGA and the hat. It's all about Donald Trump, of course. And I'm not interested in defending Trump and his personality and way of communicating. We need to separate the person from the message. MAGA is about policy. Democrats have made it about Trump. Donald Trump didn't create MAGA, Make America Great Again. Didn't create the analysis to get to MAGA, policy ideas to promote MAGA, nor the recognition that America has been in secular decline since the 1970s. He took these things, right? He decided to run as a Republican, he embraced these proposals, and off he went. Remember, most of his life, certainly until 2015, Trump was a Democrat. Now, he worked both sides of the aisle, right? As a businessman, as a wealthy guy, he worked both sides, but still, pretty much a Democrat most of his life, which is typical of someone in New York. He'd probably think of him as a JFK Democrat today. If he was actually a Democrat, he'd be on the right side of the party. When it comes to Make America Great Again, Ronald Reagan used the phrase, Bill Clinton used the phrase or something like it. Democrats allude to the same idea as well. Just this week, they're talking about building up the middle class, restoring the middle class. It's recognition the middle class has been decimated, hollowed out. And they need to restore it. They have to make the middle class great again. America is and has been in decline due to poor public policy at the federal, state, and local level since the Lyndon Johnson administration. We reached our apogee in the 1960s. Now, to recognize this decline, this secular decline, that is how I describe it, is not to say America isn't still a productive, creative, powerful country. Today, the average American lives a life generations before them would envy and fight for. We only need to go back 100 years to recognize how well Americans today have it, even our least well off. Underneath the veneer, the thin veil of civilization, and apart from the 25 to 30 million households living well to very well to unbelievably well, America is struggling, decaying, coming apart, slowly to be sure, but the secular decline is real. You know it. You see it. Our political leaders see it. Our business leaders see it. China sees it. Russia sees it. Our allies see it. Look at some of the legislation President Biden has passed and he's so proud of. The Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. Those are all things that are trying to correct the errors of the past. Now, I'll give you the Inflation Reduction Act, obviously, is really a Green New Deal, so that's about the future. But still, generally speaking, it's about correcting mistakes of the past. Some of the indicators or policies one might cite to reveal this secular decline or that drive MAGA would include, and I'm going to run these down kind of off the top of my head. It's a pretty good list. So get ready with me. And the list could go longer. Since the 1960s, historic levels of legal and illegal immigration in changing demographics and skill levels. We have imported from around the world every ethnic, racial, religious, cultural conflict on the planet right into our own borders. Since the 1980s, unchecked federal, state, and local deficits and debt, up to $40 trillion now. Record household debt, record credit card debt, record student loan debt. Today, we have $1 trillion interest payments on that debt. Since the 1970s, unchecked trade deficits, reaching $1 trillion in 2022. The voluntary hollowing out of America's manufacturing and service sectors moved to other countries, offshoring, outsourcing. A massive transfer of wealth out of the country, reaching some $35 trillion on a net basis, mind you. Again, the winning away, the hollowing out of the middle class. Since the 1960s, overregulation at every level of government. Since the 1970s, too much reliance on the Fed for managing macroeconomic trends. Since the 1970s, an abdication of responsibility by members of the US Congress and state legislatures to write detailed laws and regulation and instead allow bureaucrats to decide the details. Since 1979, failing public education, in particular in our largest cities, impacting people of color. Since 2001, living in a surveillance society where we are tracked, traced, videoed, recorded, everywhere we go, everything we do in our daily lives. Since the 1990s, deliberate attack on free speech. Since the early 2000s, weakening voter integrity. Since the 1960s, the watering down of citizenship. Globalization, building up China, hoping they would be our friend, but instead is now a well-armed foe. After what we have, our role in the world. Since the 1960s, forever wars and being the world's policeman. Cultural and social changes pushed through courts. Since the 1960s, a growing number of Americans supported by government handouts. Since the 1960s, the rise in the number of people in poverty. The breakdown of the family unit. The rise of the single mother. The baby daddy, the welfare game. Sexualization of children and displacing the parent with government. The steady decline in the annual percent change in real per capita GDP. Since the 1970s, zero real wage gains for hourly workers. Since the 1970s, the persistent rise in the cost of living. Since the 1990s, the financialization of America. Since the early 2000s, the commoditization of the housing market. Since the 1990s, forcing a transition to green energy and eliminating fossil fuels. Since just recently, forcing the use of EVs to replace the internal combustion engine. Legalized pornography and prostitution, legalized gambling, legalized drugs, defending the police, no cash bail, DAs who don't enforce laws. Since the 1980s, ever-rising homelessness. Since the 1990s, closing mental institutions. The move towards privatization by local and state governments. A rapid increase in wealth and income gaps. Since 2008, increased division by race, language, culture. Governments no longer solving the problems confronting American citizens. And the list could go on. I stopped in the interest of time. MAGA is about stopping the trend and restoring structural strength of the United States. The proposals of MAGA have been the same since the 1980s. Secure borders and no illegal immigration, balanced budgets and reduced debt, fair and balanced trade and the end of reliance on China, better public education and school choice, less regulation constraining individuals and businesses, reducing the role of the Federal Reserve in management of the US economy, maintaining low rates of inflation, restoring the two-parent household, restoring voting integrity, restoring liberty and freedom, restoring peace and ending wars. We are a divided nation. We're going to need to find common ground on common issues that are challenging the structural integrity of the US economy, households, and individuals. Liberals don't need to attack people who wear MAGA hats. They support Trump and excuse his prickly personality because he appears to be trying to stem the decline, pushes back, fights hard, and is using his own wealth to do so. These issues are visible to all of us. Will we do anything or stay on the same path to our continued demise? Big questions, big questions. November 5th will go some way to answering our direction, answering these questions. I have a MAGA part 2 coming. What Trump needs to do to achieve his goal. His rhetoric doesn't seem to include those things that are necessary to get to MAGA. Remember now, he only has 4 years. He's a lame duck president, one and done. All right, that's all I have for you right now. Always try to buy American.